February 6, 2025 La Crosse Board of Education meeting to order. And we will have the roll call.
Mr. Alberts?
Here.
Mr. Magneski? Ms. Berkedal? Here. Dr. Garcia? Here. Dr. Jimenez?
Oh, excuse, I'm supposed to say that,
That's
okay.
Mr. Manka?
Here.
Mr. Newmeister?
Excused.
Dr. Sprague?
Here.
Ms. Sukla?
Here. Okay. We recognize that the Hogan Administrative Center occupies the land of the Ho-Chunk people. Please take a moment to celebrate and honor the ancestral Ho-Chunk land and the sacred lands of all indigenous peoples. We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's agenda has been previously distributed to the board. I would entertain a motion with a second to approve the agenda as submitted unless there's a motion to amend. I would like to, with the board's permission, move item 601 up ahead of item 2, just because people have traveled a distance, so we could respect the time of the auditors and have that item first, if that's okay with everyone.
Wait, you said to move it in front of the showcase or right after?
We could do it right after,
Okay.
because we've got people there for that too. Thank you. So we need a motion to approve the agenda with that change.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda, changing the ordering of item number 6.01, excuse me.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes. Okay, sorry, I have to read my script here. So for public speakers, do we have any tonight? Okay, so we have no public speakers tonight, so we will pass that part. And we will go on to the school showcase, and I will turn it over to Dr. Engel.
Very excited to invite Mariah Bigelow, one of our teachers from Cooley Montessori, up to talk about the greenhouse and plant sale at Northside Elementary, Cooley Montessori.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Mariah Bigelow. I teach E2, which is 4th, 5th, and 6th grade at Cooley Montessori when we're housed over at Northside Elementary. And we have had a yearly tradition of a spring plant sale. And this year will be our 4th annual plant sale. And I'd like to share with you some pictures and some things that we do over the course of the year for our plant sale, and what ultimately this led us to our big greenhouse project, which we now have in the courtyard of our school. So it started with a bucket of dirt, because children love to play in the dirt. And I noticed that when children have their hands in soil and working with plants and having that something purposely to do, their bodies and their emotions become self-regulated, and they're able to continue on in their day. And so I had a bucket of soil and just a couple of plants, and over the course of the years, we had started with 10 plants, and then all of a sudden we had 100 plants, and then we had 1,000 plants, and we needed to do something with all of these plants. And so myself and some coworkers put on, or offered to the children to guide them through a plant sale, and they have totally taken it on as their own. And having 4th, 5th, and 6th graders in the classroom, my 5th and 6th graders now have done this plant sale for a couple of years, and so they have been able to lead in ways that I never, ever could have guessed for them. So just some pictures. We are working on this plant sale really all year, and it starts with propagating plants. The children take plants from they call them our mother plants, and propagate them over the course of the year. They care for the plants by watering them, fertilizing them, cleaning the leaves. These are all self-regulation tools that the students use all day, every single day. And transplanting smaller plants into bigger pots. You can see some pictures there of transplanting tomatoes in the spring. We plant vegetables and herbs and flowers, and we start with little newspaper cups that they have to make and transplant them into milk cartons that we reuse from breakfast and lunch. So a lot of, as the year goes on, more and more things get involved for our plant sale. But we do more than just plants. Our plant sale connects really well to our extensive botany units. And so the children learn about plants' fundamental needs. They learn about photosynthesis. They learn about the plant macronutrients. And so students make fertilizer out of, they dehydrate eggshells and banana peels and clementine peels and coffee grounds, and they grind it all up into a fertilizer that they sell, and people can sprinkle that on top of the soil. And we add it to our own soil as well. They also realized that they were losing some business because some people said, I don't want to take care of a plant. And so they created in the top left-hand corner, you can see cactus rocks, the plants you can't kill. So, and that's a big part of this whole thing as well, is the business aspect. We teach business lessons throughout the course of the entire school year and talk a lot about marketing and supply and demand and who is it that we're selling these things to. And so this was something that some fifth graders came up with when they realized we were losing some business. Another thing that they do is macrame. I had very direct instructions of which macrame pieces to bring. So this is one piece that a student made last week, a fifth grader. They are for sale for $15, I was told. And then this is one that a group of 2 fourth graders worked together. So last year we had over 70 macrame pieces that got sold, which was a huge part of our fundraiser. So not only are there plants, house plants, vegetables, herbs, flowers, we have rock art, we have macrame, we have fertilizer. And then when we get closer, we get more and more marketing lessons. We go to, we often take a city bus to Pearl Street Books, where she gives us lessons on inventory and how to market. The children make flyers where we go around to all the different downtown businesses and hand out flyers. We go to all the north side houses and pass out flyers. So marketing is a big part of it. They have to research and figure out how much money they can sell these plants and other materials for. So there's a lot of research involved and understanding the market of plants. And so they price everything, which takes a long time for fourth, fifth, and sixth graders to figure that out. And as we get closer, here are just some more marketing examples. So they have to figure out how are we going to get as many people here as possible. That's going outside of just the Cooley Montessori and Northside families. We want everyone and anyone in the community to come to this. So really big posters that take up the whole fence, and beautiful posters, making sure that people understand what there's available to buy. So a student put together a trifold of the herbs and vegetables and flower seedlings that we started. And last year, the students raised over $8,000 at the plant sale. And the year before that, the second plant sale, they raised $7,500, and our first one we raised just over $5,000. And our first one, we were able to use that money to get swings for the Northside Cooley Montessori playground, which is super exciting for the kids to be able to be a part of that. And the plant sale from the second plant sale allowed us to, with that, and then with many partners including Rotary After Hours and FSPA, we were able to purchase and build a $50,000 greenhouse, and it's 16 by 42 foot. So it's about the size of a classroom. And believe it or not, we have it pretty well filled already with just some really beautiful big plants, but there's always room for more. Here's a picture of a group of volunteers that were building our greenhouse. We spent like 4 or 5 weekends putting that together. It was a really huge project and took hundreds of volunteers to do this. It was really beautiful for everybody to come together. Here's just on the picture on the left, you can just see, this is all of our inventory from the plant sale last year. And the kids wanted to put it all in the greenhouse just to see what it would look like filled up. And then you can kind of get an idea of the size of it. The picture on the right, we had donated from a local company the gravel for the greenhouse. The students got to install it, so they carried gravel from the truck to the courtyard for 2 afternoons. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And they still talk about, oh, remember when we had to haul all this gravel in? But they are proud of all of their hard work with the gravel in there. We had a large donation of 7 or 8 big, beautiful trees that are, some of them are in the greenhouse, some of them are in classrooms because our greenhouse couldn't hold all of them. So here's a picture with some of the students with a couple of the big trees in there. And the picture on the left is what the greenhouse looks like today. So we don't have tables and chairs like that are greenhouse approved yet, nor do we have like tiered shelving units. Those are things that we are working towards. But students put together little table and chair set, and there's always somebody working in there, whether it's on plants or sometimes they just need a quiet, beautiful, warm spot to read or write or work on an assignment. And it has become just this perfect, beautiful oasis to go to. It's just a happy, happy place. And the picture on the right there is just a couple of students that are working on propagating some of our plants. So that also takes a lot of work. Have to replace the water and put in root fertilizer and make sure the roots aren't getting root rot. So there's a lot of work that's done with that. But yeah, the plant sale this year is May 9th and 10th. May 9th is after school from 3 to 7, and then it's Saturday morning, May 10th, Saturday morning. So I hope to see you all there. The money raised this year will be for shelving units. Right now we have shelving units that are vertical, and we're looking at shelving units that are tiered so that the plants get the correct amount of sunlight. What questions do you have? Thanks.
So I'll kick it off. So is the greenhouse solely for the Montessori program, or is that for all of Northside?
It's for everybody in the building.
Okay.
Yep, a lot of Northside children with an adult will go in there to self-regulate or for a break, water plants. There's always work to be done, and all of the teachers, all the staff in the building kind of know the list of things that can be done in there if they go in there with a student.
And getting your hands in the soil doesn't just self-regulate kids, adults too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of adults go in there.
Yeah. Other questions, comments?
I'm telling y'all, project-based learning is pretty cool. Aside from tiered shelving, what other dreams or hopes do you have for the greenhouse? What do you
That's a
plan to
great
achieve?
question. One of my biggest goals is to have the first elementary egg program in Wisconsin. We have the construction for it, and now we can make that happen. So that's my big dream. Otherwise, it's just getting the tables that we're looking at can hold 24 students, and the greenhouse can do that with some shuffling of plants around. So be able to have whole classes in there and have lessons. It doesn't have to be botany related. A teacher could go in there and do read aloud for half an hour. They could bring their students in to do some writing or some journaling. So just to have access, another classroom space where teachers and students both could have access to.
Where is your plant sale? Is it in the greenhouse or where do you hold it?
It is on the playground. Yeah, so the children move all of the plants out and set everything up so that we get a lot of traffic that goes by that sees, oh, what's going on over there? And they pull through, so yeah.
Wonderful program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we will skip now to 6.01 for the 2023-24 financial audit report, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Engel and Ms. Sprang to introduce the auditors.
Yes, I'll turn it over to Ms. Sprang.
From Kerber Rose. It's our first year with Kerber Rose. The audit went very well. They were great to work with. And Greg came here all the way from Green Bay today, so thank you for moving him up on the schedule. Take it away, Greg. Oh, and on your board docs, you have the audited financials, which you also have by your spot. Those are also posted to our website. And then the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation that Greg is going to go through has also been added to board docs. All right.
Thank you for having me tonight. I appreciate you moving me up the agenda so I can head back across the state. So on the PowerPoint slides, I put together the audit results first and then some financial observations. And as I go through those, feel free to stop me and ask me any questions that you may have, or I can take any questions that you have for me at the end of the presentation also. If we can move on to the next slide. As far as the audit results, these financial statements contain a clean, unmodified audit opinion, which is what you're striving for. As far as the audit itself, it's really two phases of the audit. We look at your most significant accounting policies and procedures around things like receipting, disbursements, general journal entries, and payroll. And we identify anything that would be an internal control deficiency. And then there's two magnitudes of material weakness or a significant deficiency that get reported if we have any of those findings. And then the second part of the audit is to take your trial balance and perform test of transactions to substantiate the amounts, such as taking your bank statements less your reconciling items and tying those to your trial balance. And so as far as those internal control results, that results in one finding, which is financial reporting, and that's the lower of the two magnitudes. And it's a significant deficiency, and I think really that just says that we prepare the financial statements that you have in front of you, but we hand them back to Patty and Davita and the finance team at the end of the draft. They review them very thoroughly. They had several changes to make, and then they accept responsibility for the content of the financial statements by signing the management rep letter. And I entered public accounting in October of 2005, and GASB was on the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, was on statement 43 and 45, which was the first pension implementation. And now I think we're on statements 102. So in the course of 20 years, we've more than doubled the accounting pronouncements. And so the cost benefit, the time it takes your team to understand how to prepare these financial statements in accordance with GAAP, really kind of, and do it once a year, really kind of outweighs the benefits of doing so. And only having a significant deficiency in financial reporting really indicates the strength of your financial team. Our audit team really enjoyed working on the audit, and there were no adjustments, and everything was very clean. So, just kind of a representation of how strong your finance team is. So, as far as the single audit, both from the federal and the state side, there were no compliance findings with regards to those results. So, moving on to the next slide. As far as financial health, we always kind of key on the unassigned general fund balance because that really represents resources available to start the 24-25 fiscal year. And at the end of the year, you had $26 million of unassigned general fund balance. And we key that as a percentage of your general fund expenditures. And anything from 20 to 30% is considered strong, and anything above 30% is considered excellent, from a bond rating standpoint. But also from our recommendation for 20 to 25% of general fund expenditures in your unassigned fund balance. You start your fiscal year on July 1st, and you don't receive the most significant revenues. Right now, you're probably going to receive a check for the first installment of the property taxes, and a lot of times the state and federal aid claims lag those initial operating months as well. So 20 to 25% recommendation there allows you to usually avoid short-term borrowing and be able to fund your operations until those most significant revenues come in for the year.
On that general fund, I do have a question. Looking at page 6 of the report, and if I'm reading this incorrectly, please let me know. It appears that this unrestricted general fund amount has declined slightly from the previous year.
Yep. On page 6, you have the full accrual government-wide, and so that's a little bit of a different measure than the general fund balance, which is on the modified accrual basis. And so the unrestricted net position isn't quite the same as the unassigned general fund balance. So this is on page 6, you have the aggregate of all your governmental activities. That includes other funds, and then also the conversion to add your long-term assets as well as your liabilities.
I had noticed the same thing, Ms. Sukla, and it wasn't until I looked at it a little longer. 24 is in the first column, 23 is in the second column. And so I think how I typically would read it would be the reverse. And so it actually increased from the year prior. But I had the same question that you did.
Yeah, and in the coming slides here,
Oh, that, got it. Oh, yes. No, I'm sorry. Then I completely misread what you said.
Yeah, I mean, we're still within the percentages that you have in your slide, and those are all positive things. I was just curious as to what that was utilized for. Is that a representation of the financial situation that we're in, that we're using some of our general fund to kind of finance ourselves because of the decreased enrollment? Or I can't remember what we approved for the budget, so that's why I'm trying to remember. Patty's saying that's not the case.
This is for the last fiscal year, 23-24. So I think what we're trying to say, so remember when you have a fund balance and we have all of our committed, unassigned, restricted, and our policy even says that our unassigned fund balance needs to be 15 to 20% of our expenditures. And that is what we're focusing on with the unassigned fund balance, and that is different than the net position.
Unassigned is different than unrestricted.
correct.
Okay.
Two different bases of accounting.
Thank you.
So in the bound financial information, if you turn to page 14, So the modified accrual basis in the general fund, in which we're kind of talking about here, takes your current assets, which is the most liquid assets, less your current liabilities, and you come out to fund balance there.
So in the first column, that general column down up below, it says unassigned,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the 26 million is.
Is that up or down from the previous audit?
That's actually up a little bit.
Okay,
and
that
should
We'll
be
see
up.
that
Perfect,
from a
that's-
percentage standpoint.
Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, you can proceed.
Yeah, we can go back to the slides now. And I think we can move on to the next slide. So I always find it useful to kind of have a 5-year look back in terms of where you've been and where you're headed here. And you can see the blue bar graph represents the general fund expenditures, which have been somewhere between 97 million to 106 million over the past 5 years. And then the black bar graph represents that unassigned fund balance from a dollar perspective. And so you've been somewhere between 22 to 26 million dollars over the past 5 years. And if we move on to the next slide, what does that mean from a general fund expenditure in unassigned fund balance perspective here? And you've been above that 20% each of the past 5 years. So you've been in that good range, and I think you've avoided short-term borrowing during that span as well. So, you know, I think it's always useful. This is a snapshot at a point in time as of June 30th, 2024. So I always say, you know, I think you're in a good position as of that point in time. And then you've got your finance team and your administrative team that kind of puts the next year's budget together, as well as foresees any future challenges to that health going into the future here. So, and with that, I would take any questions that you may have for me.
I have just getting a little bit of clarity on the financial reporting finding. 'Cause I am not an accountant. So, I had to ask my brother-in-law about some of it too. So thinking about the matter of internal control and what you say in the paragraph here in the general note or the cover letter, that this matter is most common in most small organizations since they do not have the resources to devote. I just wanted to get a sense of like the size of our school district. I'm not used to thinking in terms of it being a small organization, but I imagine compared to a large corporation, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, typically a lot of governments and districts are smaller. You're at the higher end of that perspective. We have 56 school districts that we audit, and I don't think there's any of them that don't have this finding, at least as a significant deficiency. Most of them actually have it as material weakness.
And noting it as a significant deficiency essentially means it would be better if we did this ourselves?
Not necessarily. About 14 years ago or so, the standards changed a little bit, and they basically said if the auditor prepares these financials, it's more of a disclosure, I would say.
Okay.
And especially as a significant deficiency being the lower threshold of that finding, so.
I'll add, Trevor, I've worked for large government entities, county organizations. It's several of them, and since they've created this new standard, it has been a finding in every county audit every year.
Mhm.
It's a standard, it's kind of impossible to meet, but you guys have to note it as a finding, but it's not a finding that is It's,
Well, it's not a material weakness by
It's,
definition,
it
right?
is, everybody has it, like, it's kind of a weird thing, you have to note it, but everybody has it, so
Okay.
I don't see any concern with that findings are always like, ooh, but that one is like, not a concern at all.
Mhm.
Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions on the audit report?
Thanks for all your work partnering with your auditors to
Yeah.
put this together, and thanks for traveling here.
And I will say that there's a lot of work when you work with a new auditor, because they've got to get everything, when you work with the same auditor year after year, they've kind of got the same routine, but when you switch audit firms, it's just a lot more prep work for staff, so I appreciate the extra work that staff have done. It's just nice to have new eyes looking on it, so that's a good thing, but it's a lot more work, and I just want to thank you for that, because that needs to be recognized.
Well, thank you, and I would also just want to recognize our finance supervisor and our business office who have to answer to all the auditors' requests and questions, and yet it was a really good working relationship between both, so we really appreciate that. Thank you.
I was telling Patty before we started, this is probably the thickest audit book I've seen, but the fact that they got a clean auditing report with such a large district, it's very commendable. That's incredible work. So I'll say nice job to you and your team.
Other comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to accept the 23-24 financial audit report as presented. Oh, Jim's got a question.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Garcia. Any other discussion on the audit? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Travel safely.
Okay,
Thank
thank
Safe
you.
travels.
Have a good night.
Watch out for deer.
So we will go back to item 4.01. And now I gotta find it on my script, so give me a moment. Okay, there it is. The consent agenda is a mechanism used by the board to deal with routine business that must come before the body. Are there any items that the members want to remove from the superintendent's consent agenda? Mr. Mankas?
May I pull the Logan Middle roofing bid memo?
Pardon?
The Logan Middle roofing bid memo.
Okay, thank you.
That's part of it. Just have a couple questions.
Mr. Bagneski?
I have a question on the employments there. It's just of interest to me, we go to these listing sessions and we hear schools asking if we could have additional teacher assistant or this or that. And I don't know by looking at this if any of those are new positions to adjust some of those. Or did somebody just retire, or did somebody get sick and take leave? So I don't know if you could generalize that for somebody.
Yeah, do we want to,
Well, it's the number of positions that were in the budget that were approved in October. And so all they're doing is if there's a vacancy, they're filling that, or if there was a new position that wasn't filled, they're filling that. Is that correct?
it's rare that we would hire somebody new after the beginning of the year. It does happen on occasion, particularly in special education, where we might have an IEP meeting, it creates an obligation for a one-on-one aide or something, and so then that would be an adjustment that's made through the HR processes. There's, indications in here of TAs being hired, we're below, we're under-hired right now for TAs. We have vacant positions that have been out there for months, so there's always a need to hire there. And then, as you see, there's resignations and terminations as well. There's turnover that happens continually throughout the year. So, ongoing process. We try and shift support where we can, because once we've kind of started the year, we know what our budget is, and we're kind of limited by that plan. But if there are acute needs, we certainly try and intervene as needed. And we get some late year stuff too. I think at Southern Bluffs, we added a fourth or fifth grade teacher right in August because we saw just a few more enrollments come in and we needed to split those classes up to be a little bit smaller. I think we saw a small addition at Hamilton this year to increase drama programming to help with social emotional learning for students in that building. You know, so there's little things that happen throughout the year, but they're pretty rare.
Thank you for your question. Okay, we have a request to take off the Logan Middle School roofing bid. Any other items to be removed from the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removals of the Logan Middle roofing bid memo and the previously discussed HR approvals. Or can we approve the HR approvals?
I think
I'll
it was just a
include the
question.
HR
Yeah.
approvals.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the items on the superintendent's consent agenda.
Can I just make, is there?
I say with the exception of the Logan Middle School roofing.
I just had one point of conversation before we vote. I just wanted to say thanks to Patty for putting together the financial report, particularly the narrative that you put together to help point out different things in the budget update, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion passes. So now we will go to the Logan Middle roofing bid memo. And what comments or questions do you have?
Yeah, I have just more some couple of operational questions, especially since when we did the bidding last time, we really have bidding. So I just want to so I'm seeing here we have 2 bids right here. Is that usually what we see for any kind of roofing situation? When was the last time we've had like roofing contracts such as this?
Yeah, last summer, last year at this time, we had roof bids. We had 2 last year. Typically, we'd like to get more than that, but there's been a lot of roof work. What I've been told, about $10 million worth of roof work in the city of La Crosse this next year. And so people who've already gotten those bids and accept those, they have enough work, so they didn't bid them. And so that's why you see the difference. There's only 2 bids there. I feel really comfortable with the low bid there.
How many bids did we get the last time on this?
We had 2 last year, and actually last year we put out, if you remember, Logan High School and State Road, and then we did Logan Middle, and we got no bids for Logan Middle last year, and we got 2 bids for Logan High and State Road. So this has kind of been typical as of late because of the amount of work that's going on in the city.
So if anyone wants to go into roofing.
Does that suggest something more about seasonality of the work? And is there a way that we can get more ahead of the game when we're looking for bids?
We actually put these bids out very early. If
Really?
you look before the first of the year, so other companies were doing that as well.
Wow.
Yeah, we put this out last year and then we redid it, and then we didn't get any bids. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We would look for a motion then to approve the Logan Middle roofing bids.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Logan Middle roofing bids. as
Seconded.
presented.
Motion and a second. I'm not saying who does it, so if you don't catch them, holler at me, okay?
I did not catch who had the second.
Jennifer.
Second.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Go on to the board consent agenda. The consent agenda is a mechanism used by the board to deal with routine business that must come before the body. Are there any items that members want to remove from the board consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the items on the board's consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the items on the board consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will now go on to item 6.02, the operational expectation monitoring report, financial administration. And we have am I correct now that this is the first time that we're going to get the report with the data and approve compliance at the same time versus splitting it into 2 meetings?
It's on an action item, so if the board wants to approve it in the same meeting, that's an opportunity.
Okay. So this is new, we're starting, it's January, so I just want to point that out to the board, that this isn't just for discussion, that we would be approving or potentially making a motion to approve compliance. So I will turn it over to Dr. Engel and Ms. Sprang.
This is Ms. Sprang's baby OE6. Just as a reminder, our operational expectations kind of are the standard by which we want the school district to operate. We review each of these on an annual basis, and this one is related to financial administration. I'll turn it over to Ms. Sprang.
Right, so always 6, we always match up with the auditor's report because much of the evidence is supported by this little booklet. So, I will just say that I'll read the executive summary. If you would like me to go through each evidence, I would be happy to do so, but it's really just reflecting what's in this book and what the auditor said. That being said, if you do have any questions, I'm here to answer. So this report monitors policy OE6, financial administration for July 2023 through June 2024. So that's the last fiscal year. The report reflects appropriate oversight by the Business Services Department, which maintains protocols and practices to support the implementation of the budget adopted by the Board of Education. The district has met the board's expectations related to ensuring district finances align with the board's goals. The report also reflects the practices and protocols in place to ensure the solid financial health of the district. All sections of the Operational Expectations 6, Financial Administration, are in compliance and supported by internal review and DPI reporting or by the district's annual audit. So, and then it goes on to say what the superintendent can and cannot do in relation to financial administration. And the supporting documents support that the superintendent did do what should be done and did not do anything that he shouldn't.
There's a lot here, and most of it's just connected back to documents in here. One of the reasons we bring the auditor in is to make sure that if there are any questions, it can align with that at the same time. So happy to take any questions about any of these things that folks are interested in, but there's a lot of minutia and arcane financial detail here, but I believe there's clear evidence that it meets the board's intent.
I do have a question. Do the auditors see what this monitoring report is? Do they know that is there any relationship between what the auditors do and this, what you're measuring for us? Is there any communication on that?
No, not at all. It's all the evidence comes from the report, which they create, and like he said, Davida and I review. So that they are really reflecting what's in our books. So then I go back into the OE after we've received these. So they, not all districts have operational expectation reports, so they wouldn't really know what we're trying to prove. But this is the basics of financial administration, so it should be proven in this book and by the work we do every day.
Yeah, I was just curious what if any correlation there was between the auditors and the policy, other than staff kind of doing the translating in between.
Yeah, we've not shared anything specific. Occasionally, we might be looking for some way to make sure that we have evidence, and Patty might talk to them about, hey, is there a way that we could demonstrate evidence that this has happened, through the audit book?
Yes. And the other thing is that, we're required by statute to have an audit. So this will reflect any audit finding. It'll be repeated in here that we, did or did not have an audit finding, which is very important. The other thing is that this follows much of our financial policy, administrative policy. So we are in compliance with policy also.
I have a question from the cover letter, the reference to the attached schedule and the uncorrected misstatement of the financial statements. I was just wondering if we could get a little context around what that is, because.
Those
again-
are from last year, I
Okay.
believe. So they have to report everything any findings from prior year or current year. And then if it was something that needed to be addressed, they have to reflect that even though it was a prior year audit, that the district did fix whatever was wrong or adjusted what was needed.
So in other words here, when we're looking at this schedule and I see the debit and the credit in the same amount, is actually us fixing it from the previous year's audit?
Yes, what?
I'm
did you-
on the cover letter,
on
on
the-
the attached schedule there, sorry. I
Okay,
took
I
that,
don't
it's the
think I have it.
unrecorded journal
Mhm.
entries, and it is from the period 7/1/23 to 6/30/24. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding what that represented.
Mr. Manka, can you pull us out of your audit report and hand that to Ms. Spring? 'Cause that-
Does she have-
Oh, I think I have.
The
I
last
think this
page.
is it.
It's the very
Okay.
last page, yeah. I believe that's what this is referring to, the uncorrected.
Oh, no. This is a disclosure. This isn't
Oh.
a finding. This is a disclosure with our self-insured dental. So we implemented that a few years ago. And all this is saying is that this is dollars that we have in a liability account for self-funded dental, but we should actually have it in fund balance as dollars that we are not liable for in this fiscal year. And this was the first year that this occurred. This is the third year. That means that we've accumulated enough from being self-funded to be able to put that into fund balance and perhaps either address an increase in dental insurance costs for the next year, or to alleviate, as it grows, the cost to our employees for dental insurance. So this is just a disclosure, it's
Okay.
not a finding.
All right, I
Mhm.
was reading that.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'd be looking for a motion regarding compliance.
Or just on 6.1, or can I ask a question about 6.2?
We're on 6.02, because we already approved 6.01.
Sorry, yeah, 6.2, indicator 1, the evidence, this is not materially different.
Okay.
The evidence indicates 95% of purchases of items less than, or above 5,000. The letter attached, the evidence attached indicates 100%. So there's just a discrepancy between the evidence and what's recorded in the table here.
Which indicator, as you're looking at 6.2?
I'm in 6.2, indicator 1. Purchases that do not have to be competitively bid are price shopped and value compared by the purchasing agent.
So that is the evidence, but we had 100% in our statement, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the statement here on the table says 95%, but the letter actually shows 100%.
Well, that's good.
No, it is good. I'm saying it's not a huge
So I think
problem.
the evidence was probably stated that at least 95%, but we're showing that 100%.
I don't think that's,
I think it's just
Nope.
Just a miss-
error
Oh.
Yeah.
in the evidence. We just would correct the evidence to state 100%.
Yeah.
Like the statement does.
Oh, gotcha.
sorry if I wasn't being
No,
clear.
no, that's good. I understand now,
Correct
yeah.
or the statement correct?
The statement's correct, the evidence is not correct.
That's really
It's
confusing
100%.
language.
Yeah.
The statement is the evidence. The statement about the evidence.
Probably we had 95% last year,
Yeah.
and that's one thing I missed then.
Okay.
We'll change that.
In regard to the monitoring report for policy OE6, financial administration, and with respect to the provisions of policy BSR5, superintendent accountability, the Board of Education concludes that the superintendent and district are in compliance.
Second.
That was, who did the second? I'm sorry.
Mr.
Oh,
Manka.
Mr. Manka, okay.
Do we sound?
So we have a motion
Yeah.
by Ms. Birkendahl, second by Mr. Manka,
It's the beard.
It's got-
regarding compliance of OE6, financial administration. Any other discussion on the matter? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 6.03, operational expectation monitoring report. And this item for action is to consider the reporting template presented to us by the administrative staff.
The only changes here are to remove the interpretations, as we have been doing as we go along. All the other indicators remain the same. I don't think there were any updates to definitions either, as those all aligned with the policy statements.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended changes to the OE4 Personnel Administration Monitoring Report template.
No second.
Motion is second. Any questions, comments? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. The next agenda item is the Results Monitoring Report, R2. And again, this is to look at the template.
And in this policy, once again, we removed interpretations. We had comprehensive updates on definitions. And in R 2.2 and R 2.3, we matched the language in R 2.1 to indicate will demonstrate reasonable achievement or growth, as has become our standard.
Any questions? This will be looking for a motion to approve the template changes to R2 Academic Performing Monitoring Report template.
I move to approve the recommended changes to the R2 Academic Performance Monitoring Report template.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Berkedahl, seconded by Dr. Garcia. Any further discussion?
Can I ask one quick question?
Of course.
On the removal of some of the definitions of terms there, the changes on page 2. Can you refresh my memory, Dr. Engel, on just why we didn't think it was like necessary to include ACT, Aspire?
Yeah, when we started to remove interpretations and go back through definitions, our goal was to define the policy language, not the supporting indicator language, which we could do, but it adds, I think, unnecessary bulk.
Yep,
You know, and
brevity,
makes it less clear to folks what's going on. And so the goal was to focus on definitions of the, not the indicators, just the policy.
Yeah.
And then I actually have another question too, so very similar, is going back down to page number 5 at R 2.2 is that change to lifelong learning, just by getting rid of the career ready or college ready. Is there a good reason why we're switching to lifelong learning?
Yep, similar reason, you know, as we looked at the policy language, it said develop skills necessary for lifelong learning. And while we use career and college ready as, you know, some of the benchmarks and the indicators, we were really focused on defining lifelong learning, the policy language itself.
All right, I swear we had a very long discussion about this when we present this. That's kind of coming back to me now. All right, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Our next agenda item is the Wisconsin Association of School Boards 2025 proposed resolution. And we would be looking for approval by this body to give myself as the delegate for the board authority to use my discretion when voting on behalf of the delegate assembly.
Are we allowed to ask you how you plan to vote?
Sure. Well, I can tell you, last year I voted with what the resolutions as they were presented, and you have those attached. And so I followed that. There were some resolutions that came up on the floor for discussion, and I voted not to discuss those because my board did not give me direction how to vote on those. So I would conduct myself in the same way.
So you're saying for these, you would vote in support of the resolutions proposed?
Yes.
Okay.
If we vote in support of it.
Assuming you give me such authority.
Okay.
And again, if there are resolutions and the resolutions can come forward from the board, and if there's substantial changes to these, I don't vote to support those because I haven't been given that direction by this body.
And the only ones that I see as interesting potentially, the decoupling of public and private school funding. It would, so right now we levy like $2.6 million locally to pay for private school education. You know, this would move it to like a general fund, and so they would have to either pay for it through general purpose revenue, which would impact funding that was directed to us, or they would have to increase taxes at the state level in order to cover the costs. So there's certainly a lot of ramifications of that, you know. Not sure personally like what I think about that exactly. That one's pretty complicated.
What do you think about the school report card standard?
That's the one I was looking at, yeah.
I mean, I think the school report cards are wholly fraught with challenges. I don't think they're a good representation of our schools. They are a federal requirement under the federal law, and so we do have to have something. And there are measures there that are dictated by the federal and state law now as well. You know, so this is, you know, asking for things to be solely based on achievement. In there, there's also, so achievement is like the first part of it. The second part of our school report card is growth, you know, how students grow over time. And then the third part is equity or gaps. So the idea is to kind of take a look at the same data 3 different ways. Unfortunately, if you're struggling with achievement, and we know it's strongly correlated with poverty, then you're gonna get dinged 3 different ways, you know. And so I think simpler's probably better, you know, as opposed to making some leaps from the federal to the state level, you know, to add a bunch of things to it. You know, there's also, they keep track of art stuff, and, which is interesting data to pursue, but, you know, if you're not big enough to have a dance program and you're like reported on that, you know,
Yeah.
it feels like a negative thing to not be able to provide that when the size of your school might dictate it's almost impossible. You know, attendance is another thing they keep track of, and we certainly have an obligation as a school district to do our part as truancy officers, but the responsibility of children attending schools are parents, not as schools. You know, so that's an interesting one too, that they're keeping track of, like, how are we held accountable for attendance when that's really not our responsibility? We're supposed to enforce truancy as like a law enforcement agency, but not to make kids come. It's a parent's responsibility, you know. So interesting stuff in there. The simpler it was, I think the better it would be. So I don't oppose that for sure.
And for the record, the process on this is that school districts, and we had an agenda item several months ago, if we wanted to submit a resolution, then it goes to the WASB Resolution Committee, who sorts out what ones they want to forward or not forward. Again, last year, there were some districts that did not have their resolutions included and were not happy about it. But it's very clear that the resolution committee takes their work very, very seriously and really works to try to find the resolutions that are going to really be supported by the majority of the district. So I don't find anything they put forward to be these are just the recommendation to WASB for how they're going to advocate for us. And so this isn't like changing state law or anything, but.
Just an advocacy platform.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a whole process before these even become resolutions, and so I learned a lot last year doing that, I'll tell you.
Totally. The other one, early childhood education, you know, funding 3K and full 4-day, you know, that would be challenging in a community like ours where it would materially impact childcare centers. You know, if people had access to all-day free childcare through 4K or partial day through 3K, it would take kids out of privately run childcare centers that are often nonprofits. You know, there would be downstream impacts. It doesn't mean we would necessarily have to provide that in a school district like ours. You know, however, like, there are some really big impacts of some of those things that we would have to consider if it became a thing. Is it good for us to have that option for full reimbursement? I think it is. And so that sort of a policy resolution, I think, is great. There are real, like, we have to more carefully evaluate some of this stuff if it came to fruition.
But our lacrosse 4K model would allow that if those facilities had DPI certified staff, that they could do it and we could reimburse them. That's an option that we would have with them.
Yeah, the money they can receive through tuition is greater than what we can provide through our reimbursement. You know, so sometimes they make decisions about, I'd rather take the $12,000 per kid that I get from a parent by not offering 4K as opposed to the reimbursement for cost from the school district. They're in a tough position, and so are we. You know, we don't get funded as well as the cost of daycare. You know, so it's a tough situation to be in for sure.
I appreciate your concern for local businesses. I just wonder if we've talked about offering more 4K opportunities, even a 4K center, and you've expressed the same concern for the local business, like local daycares that are already struggling, but I wonder if more families were choosing to send their 4K age students to public schools for 4K, would that open up room in those private daycare facilities for some of the younger kids, if there's like a bigger demand for those?
So
Different
the
teaching.
staffing ratio is, you make your money on the four-year-olds, you lose money on the little ones because of
Typically,
staffing ratio. So if you take those 4-year-olds away from them, it actually makes their business
Yep.
less stable.
They'd have to raise cost, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
So our job is to educate kids to the best of our
Yeah.
ability, and certainly offering 3K and full day 4K would benefit the education of students, but we're also part of our community. And,
Yeah.
you know, if we were to jeopardize the availability of childcare for folks working at Festival
Yeah.
and Quick Trip and Mayo,
That's tough.
like that we have to be conscientious of our role in that broader
Yeah.
fabric.
Okay.
I do appreciate that included in here is funding for school meal debt relief. I think is a growing issue across the state and really important.
Pardon, what was that?
For relief of school meal debt. So,
Any other discussion, others, we look for a motion?
Full of motions tonight. I move to give the WASB delegate Deb Sukla or their designee the authority to use their discretion when voting on behalf of the school district of La Crosse at the WASB delegate assembly.
seconded.
A motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much. And I will report back. Moving on to information items, result monitoring report R 3.1. And again, this is an information report. This isn't an action item because this is an R and it's broken into numerous pieces. So I'll turn over to Dr. Engel.
Fantastic. So one element of our involved citizenship report, I will turn it over to Mr. Thimright, who's got a little narrative and some description.
Sounds good. So R 3.1 evaluates students' understanding of citizenship and their participation in the democratic process. Progress is assessed using 2 indicators. One of them is performance on the Wisconsin forward exam, civic responsibility, and the other one is student voter registration rates. For civic responsibility, using the Wisconsin forward exam, 55.6% of our students in 4, 8, and 10 met or exceeded expectations in civic responsibility in 2024, but marking a slight decline from 2023. Worth noting is white students scored the highest with 62%, while other groups reported lower results. Hispanic at 39%, Black students at 21%, Asian students 46%. And students from low-income backgrounds scored 41%, and students with disabilities 20%. These disparities underscore ongoing challenges in achieving equity across student groups. For the second indicator, with the student voter registration rates in 2024, 27.4% of eligible high school graduates were registered to vote, and this is down from 39.7% in 2023. White students also had the highest registration rates at 32%, where Hispanic and African American students reported lower rates at 15 and 11%. Interesting to note, according to the Civic Center article published in 2023, youth voter registration rates in Wisconsin were down very critically in 2022, with under 5% of 18-year-olds in Milwaukee County and 10% in Dane County registering to vote. So not surprising, registration rates in Wisconsin, voters statewide are far below those of the older voters, which were 35, there's a 35% gap between 18 and 19-year-olds and those of 45 and older. It's worth noting that La Crosse did not have a November election in 2023, which may have influenced voter registration, particularly amongst 18-year-olds. While La Crosse data aligns with the broader statewide trends, there is room for improvements in the voter registration rates. Our data reveals some progress in areas, but highlights gaps that require attention. So the monitoring report would suggest the superintendent has not met expectations for reasonable progress in indicators 1 and 2.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
When the data around voter registration was collected, was that before or after the election in November?
I can get back to you. Maybe Dr. Engel would know.
So it's last year's seniors, so it would have
So
been.
last spring, maybe?
Last spring, yeah.
Okay.
So it would have been before this particular election. I assume we would see a significant bump
Yeah.
in voter registration
That's what I
for
was-
the 25, reporting year.
Okay.
The challenge being that even with the November election and maybe high interest, maybe half of kids are 18 at that point. So you're limited, there too in terms, having probably a hotly contested spring election this year. For school board will be the big issue. Maybe the state Supreme Court race will probably drive, a lot of registration this spring. So I could see a definite bump up again this next time around. And I suspect some sort of continual oscillation in the year where there's no November election, it being down, and the year where there is, it goes up. So, when I look at the graduating class numbers here, 21, 24, 39, 27, if I graphed those and took a best fit line, it would show an upward slope over 4 years, but it is a pretty substantial drop from last year, so. And I see the same thing with the other results as well. On the civic responsibility item, if you look at a 4-year trend, it's probably a slight increase to maybe flat, depending on how you look at that, so we're not making movement on it, which isn't what we want to see, and a certain decrease from last year, so.
One thing that I do know, this is in a situation where it's useful to have that state benchmark as well, where our 10th graders on the whole are still ahead of the state average on the Wisconsin Forward Social Studies category. So, over that period of 4th grade to 8th grade to 10th grade, we are seeing improvement year over year in that sort of way, but the averages tell a different kind of story.
And this is, so Jeff and I are working on, what it'll actually look like, but we're gonna be presenting slightly more robust data as it relates to the state testing and trying to compare cohorts of students as opposed to just like 4th grades to 4th grades, right? Because it's not the same kids to demonstrate learning. Whereas on our English language arts and math tests, we can compare last year's 3rd graders to this year's 4th graders to get a sense for, did that group grow? The same kids, comparing apples to apples a little bit better. And then also comparing us to other similar sized school districts with similar demographics. We have similar conditions that are, like, we're not the same as Bangor or, even on Alaska. Like, we have different conditions because of our size and complexity, rates of poverty and, demographic diversity. Comparing us to similar school districts might provide more information, like, how do we compare? Maybe we're doing worse than we thought, maybe we're doing better than we thought. So that'll be forthcoming as we're able to take some time to do those analyses, though. It's a lot of data to dig and just hand jamming lots of stuff, so it takes a little while, but we'll be there.
Again, this is the opportunity for the board to discuss and unofficially indicate reasonable progress, but no vote tonight. The official vote will take place later with the complete results monitoring report. So are there any other questions on this report? Comments?
My only comment would be that it did seem over the years that it slightly increased. It was never really down. It should be higher, but it gradually went up.
Any other comments? Okay. We'll move on then to communications from student representatives, and we'll start with Ms. Burrell, then Mr. Olson, and then Ms. Nelson.
Yeah, so we are, as you all know, we're back from winter break. We're kind of just in that like weird like limbo period between, you know, like the start of the new year and like the end of semester. So like while classes are kind of like winding down, so people have their like sports or their extracurricular activities that they're like, you know, ramping up. I know Ms. Berkedal mentioned the show choir competition that was last weekend at the start of the meeting, so that's always fun. But apart from that, I know Student Senate is starting a virtual kindness wall, which is like a new version of like the kindness wall we had last year. And I know the person who like runs that, and she said it's been very successful like last year, so I hope it continues to be successful this year. And apart from that, we have the BSU Black Student Unity starting up again this week, so it's always great to see groups like that in the school that help make it like a safe and like inclusive place for all people that attend Lake Central. So.
The last 2 or so weeks for Polytechnic have been very busy. You would be surprised how much time rest and relaxation takes. Aside from that, as previously noted, semester is ending, which means we're all scrambling. Seniors in particular will be turning in their literary review papers for their senior exit project, which is a big deal for them. And most students will be approaching the final stretches of their second personal project of the year, which is exciting.
Yeah, again, big topic, semester's ending. I think people at Logan are excited because there's going to be like a less rigorous final schedule this year, so I think that takes some of the pressure off, so that's nice. We've got a lot of music stuff going on again, as mentioned. The show choir performances went well. We had a couple of people from Logan get some, I think, soloist awards, so that's always good to see. The solo and ensemble season is coming up, so everybody's preparing for that, which is a great time. This is kind of an exciting one. The Wind Symphony is on January 16th, going up to Whitewater to play for the Wisconsin Concert Band Association. There's a convention there, so we're all preparing for that, so that will be exciting. But yeah, for the couple days we've been back, things have been good so far.
Thank you so much. Ms. Berkedal.
No announcements, just thanks to Laura for circulating the sign up to attend the Grants Award Luncheon. Hope you all can make it. So it was a great event.
As for announcements for myself, I do want to note, I want to clarify, the next board meeting is Monday, the 27th.
That's correct.
Not Monday, the 20th, so make sure you get that on your calendars. That's Martin Luther King Day, so we want to make sure that we have good attendance on the 27th. I also want to note that on Wednesday, the 29th of January, is going to be the board policy and linkage workshop at 6 p.m. That was originally scheduled for February 4th, I believe, and so that's moved to this date. So make sure you get that on your calendar for the correct date. It's going to be a really important discussion, I think, and we want to make sure everybody has that on their calendar. That's all that I have. Dr. Engel.
Just wanted to highlight that we'll be getting a notification out regarding our key staff nominations as a part of our Golden Apple program in collaboration with LEA and LPEF to recognize awesome staff in our schools. So second quarter nominations will be coming up here on Wednesday. So we'll get that out, submit for folks that you see that you think are doing a great job in our schools that align with our mission. And then the other thing is we'll be getting a notification out to the public shortly about our interest in seeking steering committee members for our district visioning process. I was very ill the last week in December before we had our break and couldn't get that out quite as quickly as I wanted to, so we're maybe a bit delayed, but look forward to soliciting interest from our community regarding that process. So look forward to that.
Do you have dates for those set up, or are you waiting till you get your membership established?
I think we're gonna set an initial date when we put out the notice, so that folks know kind of what that initial commitment is, and then after that, we'll modify things based on people's general availability. Once we fine tune that notice, we'll have that available, but it'll be at the end of January sometime.
Okay. So board debriefing, Mr. Newmeister's on deck, so I would just ask, do any board members have anything they'd like to offer regarding this evening's meeting, regarding what we did well, what didn't go well, or any improvements? Mr. Manka?
I can't tell if this is just us working efficiently and being great board members, or if it's just, what now? Well, yeah, obviously, yeah. But, when we're able to, I mean, the efficiency, we started at 6:15 until 7:30. It felt like a much shorter and more efficient board meeting with being able to pass motions beforehand, where I think we kind of delved into, we had to wait 8 additional day. Maybe, I kind of curious if that's simply just because we're able to get our questions done and then pass it right away, or again, if it's just shorter reporting, but I kind of like the fact that it was more of a quicker one. We were focused on topics and,
Helps that we had a really clean audit too.
yeah, that too.
That might have been a longer discussion.
I was just about to say that
otherwise.
too.
I thought the linkage went well. It was really well attended by board and quite a few elementary staff too. And they had some suggestions for how to increase, I don't know, information or communication about the linkages to get attendance up even more for that.
Yep.
So,
I had a linkage yesterday at our Redeemer Lutheran Church. There was about 20 people there.
Wow.
It was really well. We talked for over an hour. Lots of questions about the referendum. No major concerns, but good ideas about, like, could we move, the students and staff and parents have put together some really cool sheds at Spence and decorated them and painted them. Could those be moved to the new property, for example, things like that. But it was really good.
Any other comments? Otherwise, oh shoot, now I've clicked on too many things here. So, we will adjourn this meeting, but we would be looking for, I'll read it. The La Crosse Board of Education will consider a motion to move into closed session on Monday, January 6, 2025, immediately following the Board of Education meeting in Hogan Administrative Center, Room 209, pursuant to statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C, for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, to wit, the superintendent's evaluation. Is there a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose as stated in Wisconsin statute 19.85, sub 1, sub C.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alberts?
Here? What am I supposed to
Are you approving going to closed session?
Do you want to go?
You want to go into closed session?
Aye. Mr. Begneski?
it's rough.
Aye.
Ms. Berkedal? Aye. Dr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Manka?
Aye.
Dr. Sprague?
Aye.
Ms. Sukla?
Aye.
Thank you.
Did you think you were done?
Okay. This meeting will be adjourned and will reconvene in room 209 for the closed session.
It's like, I couldn't hear you from over here.
I was like, what?
Okay. It's like you're.